Thank you very much, Sama. I'm not very good, ladies and gentlemen, at doing the TED Talk thing, so I'm going to hide, as all bureaucrats do, behind the podium. But I hope that you can hear me, and I'm very, very pleased to be here. Thank you very much, Khalid, for your opening and inspiring remarks. Nabil, how do I follow you after that exciting presentation? I'm going to try my best. Sama, thank you for your wonderful introduction. As Sama said, my name is Usha Rao-Monari. I'm the Under-Secretary General at the UN. It doesn't mean anything outside of the UN, but suffice to say, I'm number 2 at an organization called the UN Development Program. Basically, we are active in 170 countries in the world and in many, many areas, from governance to gender to the topic at hand, which is sustainability. So what is sustainability, right? And why is it important? We run our business on the basis of Agenda 2030, which is essentially the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, of which there are 17. All our activities are focused on these, and we try to work with partners, including venture capital funders, private equity, lenders, private sector, community service organizations in order to achieve our goals. So what are we talking about here if we take a step back? We are at a point of extreme fragility in the world today, extreme vulnerability. We've been hit by crises that have never hit us before, and they've all come in at the same time. So when we look around the world, we have the pandemic, yes, and we don't know when that's ever going to go away, but that is surrounded by a number of crises around the world, not least of which is the Ukraine war, which is currently happening. And that is creating global impacts beyond just Ukraine or even Europe. And by that I mean there's an energy crisis out there, there's a food crisis out there, and there's a debt overhang crisis out there. So when you put all these together, it's the people that get affected. It's the people that are being impacted disproportionately. All that comes against our journey that we started 2 years ago for 10 years to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, or Agenda 2030. And right now, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, I think at least one wheel has fallen off the SDG wagon. And that's making it much harder for us to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Somebody asked me, I said, well, so, what are these Sustainable Development Goals? Why are they so important? What are they all about? Simply, they look at issues around climate, water, partnerships, gender, anything that affects us as people and planet in order to put ourselves on more resilient and greener pathways. That's basically what the SDGs are. And countries have adopted the SDGs. I'm sure you've heard phrases like net zero. How do you get to net zero? What does that actually mean? You've heard of the Paris Agreement. You've heard of the IPCC and their dire predictions of the world exploding if we go beyond 1.5 centigrade and so on and so forth. I'm sure you've heard about all of these. The SDGs are meant, if we do it right, to put us on a pathway that does not lead to particular disaster. Now, when I look at the world that Nabil comes from, you talked about an ecosystem. You're absolutely right, Nabil. The world you come from is looking at generally shorter-term horizons, whereas the SDGs are a very long-term horizon. It's a much longer-term game you have to play, but that doesn't mean that you have to put your money out there for 20 years. It just simply means you have to direct your money more sensitively and perhaps more sort of craftily almost in order to achieve these goals. In the US, SDGs took the form of something called ESG, which I'm sure you've all heard of as well. And the ESG revolution overtook the entire world, including the United States. ESG-related investments reached 35 trillion, believe it or not, in 2021 around the world. It's expected to be 44 trillion this year and going up to 55 to 60 trillion in 2025. That's huge amounts of money, right? Now, why did this even happen? And it happened for a few reasons. First of all, the investors led the demand. So if you're a company, your shareholders, your investors are leading the demand and saying, you have to worry about ESG. Secondly, technology is driving greater transparency, greater way of capturing what it means to be sustainable or not to be sustainable, to follow ESG principles or not. Thirdly, the energy transition, as I talked about, and the Paris Agreement and the Sustainable Development Goal, all of these have created a tailwind for ESG investing. Next, regulation. So if you look at the EU, they have a sustainable finance disclosure requirement. The UK has something, like US has, et cetera, et cetera. Regulation is driving companies, including financial entities like many of you, to worry about ESG. Net zero pledges were made. I don't know how many of you, or if any of you went to COP26 in Glasgow. There was the number of companies signed up to something called GFANS, which my friend Mark Carney put together. It's all about achieving net zero by a certain point, but that creates the need for action and creates the need for investment. There are also issues like social issues in supply chains, child labor, gender disparities, and so on and so forth that are driving. So all these things, and one of the biggest things that is creating a huge move towards ESG investing is negative screening. Simply put, there are investors out there, Norway comes to mind, for example, who said, I'm going to take money out of coal. I'm going to take money out of, sectors that I'm not happy. So negative screening has resulted in a huge push. So where does this leave us as a community of investors, as business leaders? Where does it leave? It leaves us at a point where we have to seriously consider how to incorporate sustainability into our operations. It's not a nice to have anymore from where I sit. It is something that we have to worry about in the DNA of our operations, our financial operations and so on. How can we help you? Now, I don't know how much time I have left, Summer, but how can we help you as UNDP? We work with companies and entities like yourself. We help you, thank you. We help you look at which goals you want to reach. Is it a climate goal? Is it a water goal? This region, for example, water is very important. Energy transition is very important. Solar, and I was talking to Khaled earlier, solar, wind, all these areas are very important for this particular region. And the point is, how do you put all these into your operations? From where I sit, I look at an equation. I call it the 4I equation. The 4I equation has become particularly important today, and it comprises the following. Every dollar that one invests today, or tomorrow, and going forward, has to be accompanied by impact, has to be accompanied by integrity, and finally by inclusiveness. And if you don't incorporate all those things together, we will find that the investments we make, including the investment Nabil makes, will not be resilient, will not be sustainable. Why is integrity so important right now? And I'm going to stop on that. I'm sure you've heard of DWS. I'm sure you've heard of other entities, especially financial entities, that are being accused today of greenwashing, blue washing, whatever, SDG washing, all sorts of washing, and they're being accused. And Nabil, I'm sure you look at that as well when you do your investments. This has become integrity, transparency, and high governance has become a hallmark, or is going to become a hallmark of every dollar you invest. And finally, inclusiveness, really. If you don't put your money into projects that are more inclusive in every way possible, more vulnerable communities, gender, youth, etc., again, resilience and sustainability will get questioned. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to stop there. Thank you very much. I'd like you all to consider rejigging and resetting your businesses towards the goal of sustainability and resilience. Thank you very much.